Ambassador Velthara stood frozen in the council chambers, her crystalline body reflecting the harsh blue light of the emergency hologram displays. The data streams flowing across the massive screens told a story that made no sense by any galactic standard she knew. 17 colonies, she whispered to herself, her voice creating tiny musical chimes as it passed through her crystal form. 17 worlds in less than 2 standard cycles. The chamber around her buzzed with activity. Council staff members from dozens of different species hurried between workstations, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic static, and electronic translations. But despite all the noise and movement, Velthara felt a deep silence in her core, the kind that came before something terrible happened. "High Mediator Kethlin," she called out, turning toward the floating, ethereal form that drifted near the central command platform. The Mindari's body was barely visible, more like a shimmer in the air than solid matter, but Velthara could feel the powerful mind within. The telepathic voice touched her thoughts gently, like cool water on heated crystal. "What troubles you so deeply, Ambassador? Your mental emanations are creating interference with the communication arrays." Velthara moved closer to the displays, her feet making soft ringing sounds against the metal floor. "These humans, Mediator. They appear from nowhere. No advanced scouts. No diplomatic envoys. No requests for territorial surveys. They just arrive." She gestured with one crystalline arm toward the tactical display showing the affected sectors. Red dots marked each human settlement, scattered across 3 different spiral arms of the galaxy like drops of blood on a star chart. When our patrol ships attempt first contact protocols, they receive the same response every time. Velthara's voice carried a note of bewilderment that resonated through her entire form. Translation confirmed through 17 different linguistic matrices, "We decline to negotiate at this time." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Around the chamber, representatives from the 47-member species of the Galactic Council stopped their conversations. The concept was so foreign that their translation devices struggled to process it properly. General Thokma of the warrior Krug species rose from his reinforced chair, his massive frame casting shadows across half the chamber. His scarred face bore the marks of 100 battles, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had never heard the word no from a species seeking to expand into council space. "This is unacceptable," he growled, his words causing several smaller species to step back instinctively. "In 3,000 years of galactic governance, every species has sought council approval before establishing colonies. It is the foundation of our peaceful coexistence." Thokma's 4 arms gestured dramatically as he spoke, his weapon harnesses glinting in the chamber's light. "No species, no matter how primitive or advanced, has ever refused to engage in basic diplomatic discourse. It violates every principle of civilized behavior." Velthara felt a tremor run through her crystalline structure. As the Council's primary xenobiologist and first contact specialist, she had overseen the integration of 14 different species into galactic society. Each had followed the same basic pattern: cautious initial contact, formal diplomatic negotiations, territorial agreements, and gradual integration into council structures. "That's what makes this situation so unprecedented, General," she replied, calling up a new set of data displays. "But there's something else. Something that makes even less sense." The holographic star map shifted, zooming in on the 17 red dots. As the scale increased, details about each world began to appear: atmospheric compositions, gravity readings, radiation levels, geological surveys. "Look at these worlds, council members. Really look at them." A murmur of confusion rippled through the chamber as representatives began to study the data. Dr. Yexola of the gas giant-dwelling Veltorians was the first to speak, her methane-breathing apparatus creating a hissing sound as she vocalized. "These are all Class X worlds," she said, her electronic voice tinged with disbelief. "Uninhabitable by any known standard. We marked most of these for automated mining operations only, no biological life forms permitted." Velthara nodded, her relief at having someone else understand the magnitude of the situation causing her form to brighten slightly. "Exactly. Every single world the humans have claimed was in our uninhabitable database. Crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, lethal radiation levels, unstable geological activity. We're talking about planets that would kill most of our species within hours of exposure." The chamber fell into stunned silence. The implications were staggering. If these humans could survive on worlds that the Council considered death traps, what did that say about their biology? Their technology? Their intentions? High Mediator Kethlin's mental voice carried a new note of urgency as it touched every mind in the chamber simultaneously. This changes our entire assessment of the situation. We are not dealing with a typical expansion scenario. Velthara felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. As the Council's expert on unknown species, the next decisions would largely be hers to make. But how do you plan diplomatic contact with a species that refuses to communicate and thrives in environments that would destroy every known form of civilized life? Mediator, she said finally, her voice carrying across the now silent chamber, I recommend we dispatch long-range observation probes to these human colonies immediately. We need to understand what we're dealing with before this situation spirals beyond our control. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the most advanced surveillance technology in the galaxy would be heading towards 17 impossible worlds, seeking answers to questions that challenged everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. Dr. Vexola's 6 arms moved gracefully across the holographic control interface, her gas-filled breathing apparatus creating a soft hissing rhythm as she worked. The emergency assembly had been called at the highest priority level, bringing together representatives from every major species in the Council. The tension in the chamber was so thick that several empathic species had to use dampening fields to avoid being overwhelmed. Council members, she began, her electronic voice translator working overtime to convert her methane-based vocalizations into something the diverse assembly could understand. What I am about to show you will challenge everything we believe we know about biological limitations and planetary habitability. The massive holographic projector hummed to life, filling the center of the chamber with a 3-dimensional representation of a world that looked deceptively peaceful from space. The planet rotated slowly, its blue and green surface appearing almost inviting until the data streams began to populate around it. Colony Site Designation 7 Alpha, Dr. Vexola announced, her voice carrying a tremor that made several representatives lean forward in concern. Our long-range probes have been observing this location for exactly 72 standard hours. The data they have collected defies every principle of xenobiology I have studied in my 4 centuries of research. Ambassador Velthara's crystalline form reflected the hologram's light, creating dancing patterns on the chamber walls as she shifted nervously. She had seen preliminary reports, but experiencing the full presentation with the assembled council felt different, more real, more terrifying. Atmospheric composition, Dr. Vexola continued, highlighting the relevant data streams, 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, with trace amounts of argon, carbon dioxide, and various noble gases. To put this in perspective for our assembled species, this mixture would cause immediate respiratory failure in Velthari, explosive decompression in Mindari, and toxic poisoning in most other known life forms. The hologram zoomed in, showing the planet's surface in incredible detail. What they saw made several council members gasp in their various ways, some with vocal sounds, others with changes in bioluminescence, and a few with involuntary telepathic broadcasts of shock. Humans were walking around on the planet's surface. Not in environmental suits. Not with breathing apparatus. Not even with basic protective gear. They were simply outside, breathing the toxic atmosphere as if it were as natural as processed ship air. They're actually breathing it, whispered Ambassador Velthara, her voice creating a crystalline chime of disbelief that resonated through the chamber. That atmospheric mixture should kill them in minutes, but they are breathing it like it's normal air. Dr. Vexola manipulated the controls, bringing the image even closer. Individual humans became visible, engaged in various activities. Children ran and played. Adults worked with tools and machinery. Elderly individuals sat in what appeared to be recreational areas, simply enjoying the deadly atmosphere. Gravity readings show 1.2 standard units, she continued, her scientific training helping her maintain composure despite the impossible data. This level of gravitational force would crush the skeletal structures of most council species within hours. Extended exposure would cause organ failure, circulatory collapse, and death. The humans in the hologram showed no signs of distress. If anything, they appeared to move with an easy grace that suggested the crushing gravity was actually comfortable for them. General Thokmar's scarred face caught the hologram's glow as he leaned forward, his 4 arms resting on the table's reinforced surface. His warrior instincts were screaming warnings that he couldn't quite articulate. Show us their military installations, Doctor. I need to understand their defensive capabilities. Dr. Vexola's breathing apparatus hissed with what might have been the equivalent of a sigh. That's where this situation becomes even more incomprehensible, General. The holographic display shifted, scanning across the human settlement from an orbital perspective. The assembled council members expected to see fortifications, weapon emplacements, shield generators, or at minimum some kind of defensive perimeter. Instead, they saw farms. Vast, organized agricultural areas where humans were growing plants that the probe's biological scanners couldn't even categorize. Beyond the farms were residential areas with small buildings that appeared to be family dwellings. There were larger structures that seemed to serve community functions, gathering places, educational facilities, recreational areas. These are not military outposts, Dr. Vexola reported, her voice barely above a whisper. These are permanent settlements. We are observing families raising their offspring on worlds we classified as uninhabitable death traps. The revelation hit the assembly like a physical blow. Several representatives made sounds of distress. Others began rapid consultations with their aides and technical staff. The implications were staggering. If humans could establish permanent civilian settlements on Class X worlds, what did that mean for galactic territorial agreements? Council Intelligence Advisor Mordun rose from his mechanical support chair, his cybernetic voice carrying undertones that his emotion processors couldn't quite suppress. The situation becomes even more complex, Council members. Our stealth probes detected additional human vessels approaching Colony Site 12 Beta yesterday. High Mediator Kethlin's telepathic voice touched every mind in the chamber with gentle urgency. Continue your report, Advisor. Site 12 Beta was marked as Class Z uninhabitable due to extreme radiation levels, Mordun explained, his mechanical systems clicking softly as he accessed data files. Background radiation that would cause cellular breakdown and death in most known species within hours of exposure. We use that world for automated uranium processing because even our most radiation-resistant drones require frequent replacement. The chamber held its collective breath as Mordun paused, his optical sensors glowing brighter as he processed the incredible data. The humans landed. They established a settlement. Within one planetary rotation, they were harvesting native flora that our botanical databases classify as lethally toxic to every known form of biological life. The chamber erupted in chaos. Telepathic species broadcast waves of confusion and alarm. Vocal species created a cacophony of distressed sounds. Even the most stoic representatives showed visible signs of shock. What kind of species thrived in conditions that would destroy everything else in the known galaxy? Ambassador Velthara had not recharged her crystalline matrix in 3 weeks. The constant stress and sleepless cycles had dimmed her normally brilliant form to a pale, translucent shadow of its usual radiance. She stood at the center of the Grand Assembly Hall, facing the largest gathering of council representatives in over 2 centuries. Every species in the galaxy seemed to have sent their most senior diplomats, military advisors, and scientists to witness what many were calling the most significant development in galactic history. The hall itself had been reconfigured to accommodate representatives who rarely left their home systems. Environmental pods housed methane-breathing species alongside atmospheric processes for the silicon-based life forms. Gravity fields shifted and flowed in carefully controlled zones to support beings adapted to everything from crushing planetary surfaces to the weightless void of space. Honored council members, Velthara began, her voice creating harmonics that the chamber's translation systems amplified into dozens of different communication methods. After 3 weeks of intensive observation and analysis, we have discovered something that changes our understanding of galactic colonization forever. She gestured toward the massive view screen that dominated one wall of the assembly hall. The display came to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of their local galactic sector. Stars glowed in their familiar patterns, connected by the established trade routes and communication networks that had bound their civilization together for millennia. We initially believed that human expansion was random, Velthara continued, her exhaustion making her normally musical voice sound strained. We thought they were simply claiming whatever worlds they encountered first, without regard for habitability or strategic value. Red dots began appearing on the galactic map, each one marking a confirmed human colony. At first, they seemed scattered randomly across the display, but as more markers appeared, a pattern began to emerge that made several representatives gasp in recognition. But we were wrong. The humans are not expanding randomly. They are following a systematic pattern that demonstrates a level of strategic thinking we never anticipated. The pattern was undeniable. Every single red marker sat on a world that the Council databases had marked with black warning symbols, planets classified as Class X uninhabitable or worse. Worlds so hostile that even the most desperate refugee populations had rejected them as potential homes. Council military strategist Yaldena of the aquatic Murtathi species shifted in her specially designed water-filled observation tank, her gill slits fluttering with agitation. The translation unit mounted on her tank converted her bioelectric communications into standard galactic speech. Ambassador Velthara, surely there must be some mistake. These worlds are not just uninhabitable, they are actively hostile to biological life. What could possibly motivate any species to choose such locations for permanent settlement? Velthara's form brightened slightly as she accessed the detailed survey data. That question led us to conduct the most comprehensive analysis of human capabilities ever attempted. What we discovered challenges every assumption we have made about the limitations of biological adaptation. The view screen shifted to show detailed planetary surveys of human colonies. World after world appeared, each more impossibly hostile than the last. Planets with surface gravity that would flatten most spacecraft. Atmospheres so corrosive they could dissolve starship hulls. Radiation levels that would cook organic matter in minutes. High-gravity worlds that would crush the skeletal structures of every known species, Velthara explained, her voice gaining strength as she presented the data that had consumed her every waking moment. Planets with atmospheric pressures that would cause our most robust deep space vessels to implode like fragile bubbles. General Thokmar activated his personal tactical display, his scarred face reflecting the ominous glow of the data streams. His 4 arms moved independently as he cross-referenced human colony locations with Council military databases. What he found made his warrior instincts scream warnings that his logical mind struggled to process. The most disturbing aspect of this situation, he rumbled, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never encountered a military problem he could not solve, is that our analysis suggests these humans do not perceive these environments as hostile territories to be conquered. He stood, his massive frame casting shadows across several smaller representatives. Every military doctrine in our databases assumes that colonization of hostile worlds requires extensive technological support, environmental modification, and defensive preparation. But these humans show none of these behaviors. Dr. Vexola's breathing apparatus hissed softly as she added her findings to the presentation. My research team has been analyzing every piece of biological data we can intercept from human colonies. What we have discovered is perhaps the most significant xenobiological finding in galactic history. The view screen displayed comparative biological data, showing atmospheric, gravitational, and radiation tolerances for various species alongside the conditions humans apparently thrived in. The differences were so extreme that several representatives assumed the data was corrupted. Their homeworld, Dr. Vexola continued, her electronic voice carrying undertones of scientific excitement mixed with deep concern, appears to be what we would classify as a Class Z death world. The gravity readings suggest crushing force that would kill most of us instantly. The atmospheric composition is a corrosive mixture that would dissolve our respiratory systems. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in before delivering the most shocking revelation. And the native life forms on their homeworld appear to be exceptionally aggressive predators. These humans evolved not just in a hostile environment, but in one where they had to fight for survival against creatures that would terrify our most hardened warriors. The assembly fell into stunned silence as the full implications became clear. If humans had evolved on a world more dangerous than anything the Council had ever encountered, then every planet they had classified as uninhabitable was not just livable to humans, it was comfortable. High Mediator Kethlin's telepathic voice touched every mind in the chamber with a mixture of awe and growing concern. They do not need our space, Council members. They want the space we cannot use. The galaxy suddenly seemed much smaller, and much more crowded, than anyone had ever imagined. The Grand Assembly Hall had become a place of exhaustion and growing desperation. For 48 standard hours, representatives from every corner of the galaxy had remained in continuous session, their various life support systems working overtime to maintain the delicate environmental balance needed to keep so many different species alive in one space. Ambassador Velthara stood at the central podium, her crystalline form now so dim from stress and fatigue that the emergency lighting systems had automatically activated to compensate. Around her, the assembled representatives showed their own signs of strain. The aquatic Murtathi had changed their tank water 3 times. The silicon-based Krennery had required mineral supplements to prevent structural degradation. Even the hardy Krug warriors showed signs of exhaustion in their normally perfect military posture. Council members, Velthara announced, her voice so quiet that the chamber's amplification systems had to boost the signal just to make her words audible. I have received word from our communications division. The humans have sent us another message. The effect was immediate and profound. Every conversation stopped. Every private consultation ended. Every species-specific side discussion ceased as if someone had activated a universal silence field. For 3 weeks, every attempt at diplomatic contact with the humans had resulted in the same response: we declined to negotiate at this time. The message had been dissected by linguistic experts from dozens of species. Psychologists had analyzed the tone and word choice. Military strategists had searched for hidden threats or demands. But no matter how they examined it, the message remained unchanged and incomprehensible by galactic diplomatic standards. High Mediator Kethlin's ethereal form shimmered with anticipation as his telepathic voice touched every mind in the chamber simultaneously. Play the message, Ambassador. Let us hear what these humans have to say after weeks of silence. The chamber's central audio system activated with a soft chime that indicated an incoming message. What emerged from the speakers was a voice that sounded remarkably unremarkable: no electronic distortion, no obvious artificial enhancement, no signs of the exotic biology that would allow survival on Class Z death worlds. It was simply a human voice speaking perfect council standard with an accent that their linguistic computers couldn't identify. To the Galactic Council, the voice began, each word pronounced with careful precision that suggested the speaker was making an effort to be understood clearly. We have noted your repeated attempts at communication over the past several weeks. We appreciate your concern for galactic stability and the peaceful coexistence of all spacefaring species. Several representatives leaned forward in their seats, environmental pods, and floating platforms. This was already more than they had received in any previous communication attempt. We wish to assure you that we have no intention of claiming any worlds currently inhabited or designated for future colonization by Council species. Our expansion activities are focused exclusively on worlds that your databases classify as uninhabitable or otherwise unsuitable for established galactic civilizations. Trade Coordinator Zilfen of the merchant Kardeshi species felt his multiple stomachs clench with a mixture of relief and growing concern. The humans were not claiming inhabited worlds, that was good news. But the implications of their preferred territories were staggering. We ask only for the same courtesy regarding territories we have claimed, the voice continued with the same measured tone. We believe the galaxy is vast enough to accommodate all of its children, regardless of their environmental preferences or biological requirements. We hope this clarifies our position and reduces any concerns about our intentions. The message ended with the same soft chime that had announced its beginning, leaving the assembly in absolute silence. For several long minutes, no one moved or spoke. The only sounds were the various mechanical systems maintaining life support for the diverse gathering of species. Dr. Vexola was the first to break the silence, her breathing apparatus creating small puffs of methane as she processed the implications of what they had just heard. Council members, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of this situation from the beginning. Her electronic voice translator worked to convert her gas-based vocalizations into something the assembly could understand. We have been operating under the assumption that the humans were refusing to negotiate because they were hostile or aggressive. But this message suggests something entirely different. She paused, allowing her scientific training to guide her analysis. They are not refusing to negotiate because they want to fight us. They are refusing to negotiate because they do not need anything from us. General Thokmar's scarred face reflected the chamber's lighting as he considered the military implications. His 4 arms rested on the table's surface, but his posture had changed from aggressive readiness to something that might have been grudging respect. They have essentially informed us that the galaxy is large enough for everyone, he rumbled, his voice carrying a note of admiration that surprised even him. They will take the worlds we consider worthless and leave us everything else. It is not a threat or a demand, it is a simple statement of fact. But Trade Coordinator Zilfen's commercial instincts were screaming warnings that his diplomatic training struggled to articulate. He rose from his merchant guild's designated seating area, his colorful robes rustling with agitation. Honored council members, while this message may seem reassuring, we must consider the broader implications, he said, his voice carrying the sharp edge of someone who understood resource economics better than most. Those worlds we classify as worthless often contain rare minerals, strategic positioning advantages, or other resources that we simply cannot access due to environmental limitations. Ambassador Velthara's crystalline form flickered with understanding as the full scope of the situation became clear. Trade Coordinator Zilfen raises a crucial point. Those worlds are no longer worthless or uninhabitable. They are now human territories, and from everything we have observed about human capabilities, attempting to claim them would be extraordinarily inadvisable. The reality of their new situation settled over the council like a heavy gravitational field. The galaxy had always been governed by a simple principle. The Council determined which worlds were habitable and valuable, then negotiated their distribution among member species. Uninhabitable worlds were ignored, written off as expensive obstacles that served no purpose except as automated mining sites or research stations. Now, suddenly, all those worthless worlds belonged to someone else. Someone who did not need Council approval, Council resources, or Council protection. The humans had fundamentally changed the rules of galactic expansion without firing a shot or making a single threat. They were no longer the sole arbiters of galactic civilization. A new player had entered the game, and they played by rules that made the Council's carefully maintained balance of power seem suddenly fragile and outdated. 5 months had changed everything in the Galactic Council chambers. The once pristine halls now buzzed with constant activity as representatives tried to understand a reality that no one had prepared for. Ambassador Velthara stood at her workstation, her crystalline form now permanently dimmed from months of stress and sleepless cycles, reviewing reports that painted a picture she still struggled to believe. The numbers were staggering. Human colonies had spread across the galaxy like seeds scattered by an impossible wind. 317 confirmed settlements. 412 more under construction. Every single one located on a world that the Council's databases had marked with black warning symbols, planets so hostile that even desperate refugee populations had refused to consider them as potential homes. High Mediator Kethlin, she called to the floating ethereal form that drifted near the central command station. The Terraforming Guild has submitted another request. They want permission to study human colonization techniques. The telepathic being's mental voice carried undertones of weary amazement. What do they hope to learn, Ambassador? Velthara accessed the Guild's latest report, her crystalline fingers creating musical tones as they moved across the holographic interface. According to Guild Master Torvex, the humans are accomplishing in 3 standard months what our most advanced terraforming teams require decades to achieve. But they are not terraforming at all, they are simply adapting to conditions that would destroy our equipment. She gestured toward the massive display showing human colony sites. Each red dot represented not just a settlement, but a fundamental challenge to everything the galaxy thought it knew about planetary habitability. They arrive on worlds with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, and lethal radiation levels. Within weeks, they have established thriving communities. No environmental suits. No atmospheric processes. No gravitational compensators. General Thokmar approached the central discussion area, his massive frame moving with the careful precision that came from months of reassessing everything he thought he knew about military strategy. His scarred face bore an expression that mixed professional respect with deep concern. Ambassador, I have completed the Military Assessment Council's analysis of human defensive capabilities, he reported, his forearms gesturing toward tactical displays that showed human colony layouts. Our recommendation is complete non-interference. High Mediator Kethlin's attention focused on the general with sharp interest. In 3 centuries of galactic military planning, Thokmar had never recommended avoiding contact with any species, no matter how advanced or aggressive. Explain your reasoning, General. Thokmar activated a 3-dimensional battlefield simulation showing various scenarios of potential conflict with human colonies. Each simulation ended the same way, with devastating losses for any attacking force. Any species that can thrive permanently on Class Z death worlds possesses defensive advantages we cannot accurately calculate or counter, he explained, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had never encountered a military problem he could not solve until now. Their natural environment provides protection that surpasses our most advanced defensive technologies. Dr. Vexola emerged from her research alcove, her breathing apparatus creating soft puffs of methane as she joined the discussion. The past months had transformed her from a curious xenobiologist into something approaching an expert on impossible biology. The final biological analysis confirms what we have suspected, she announced, her electronic voice translator working to convey the magnitude of her findings. Humans are not simply adapted to hostile environments. They are optimized for them. She activated her personal holographic display, showing comparative biological data that made several nearby representatives step back in instinctive alarm. Human physiological tolerances were displayed alongside those of every known species in the galaxy. The differences were so extreme that the data looked like measurement errors. Their bone density allows them to function normally in gravitational fields that would crush most of us instantly. Their respiratory systems process atmospheric mixtures that would cause immediate organ failure in other species. But most remarkably, their psychological and social structures are designed specifically for survival under constant environmental stress. The implications hung in the air like a tangible presence. These humans were not just another species expanding into the galaxy. They were something entirely outside the normal parameters of galactic civilization. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication. The chamber security systems activated briefly, scanning for potential threats before allowing the main entrance to cycle open. What entered was not another council representative or military advisor, but something no one had expected to see. A human female walked into the chamber, accompanied by two others who remained near the entrance. She was remarkably unremarkable by galactic standards, no obvious cybernetic enhancements, no exotic physiological adaptations, no signs of the incredible environmental tolerances her species had demonstrated. She looked like she could have been any of a dozen similar species, except for something in her posture and movements that suggested strength held carefully in check. "May I address the council?" she asked, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber without electronic amplification. The assembled representatives turned toward her with expressions ranging from curiosity to carefully controlled fear. Ambassador Velthara felt her crystalline structure resonate with nervous energy as she found her voice. We are honored by your presence," she managed, her words creating harmonic overtones that betrayed her anxiety. "The Council has many questions about your species' intentions and capabilities." The human smiled, and somehow that simple expression conveyed both genuine friendliness and an underlying strength that reminded everyone present exactly what kind of worlds this person called home. "I am Lee Mina, representing the Human Colonial Administration," she said, her tone remaining calm and professional despite being surrounded by beings who had spent months analyzing her species like a potential threat. "We understand there has been considerable concern about our expansion activities. We thought it might be helpful to clarify our position directly." Dr. Vexola stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. "The worlds you choose for colonization, they are incredibly hostile by every standard we know. How is it possible for biological life to thrive in such conditions?" Mina's expression remained patient and friendly as she considered the question. "Hostile to you," she replied gently. "To us, they are home. You see death worlds with crushing gravity and toxic atmospheres. We see worlds with strong gravitational fields to keep our bodies healthy, rich atmospheric compositions to breathe deeply, and challenging environments that help our communities grow strong and resilient." The chamber fell into complete silence as the fundamental difference in perspective became clear. What the Council saw as uninhabitable wastelands, humans saw as prime real estate. High Mediator Kethlin's telepathic voice finally broke the silence, carrying undertones of something that might have been awe. "What you are suggesting represents a fundamental redefinition of galactic colonization policy and territorial boundaries." Mina shook her head with that same patient smile. "No, High Mediator. What we are suggesting is that the galaxy is much bigger than any of us previously imagined. You take the worlds that suit your needs and biology. We will take the worlds that suit ours. There is room for everyone." As the human diplomat and her escort left the chamber, Ambassador Velthara felt the weight of history settling around them like a change in atmospheric pressure. The age of the Galactic Council as the sole arbiters of galactic civilization was over. The galaxy now belonged to all its children, even the ones who were tough enough to call hell home and make it beautiful.